everyone, and welcome back to the Pottery Corner, my studio down on the south coast of England near Chichester. A couple of weeks ago I uploaded the video where we made the plaster moulds, you'll remember. These are the plaster moulds that we made in that video. So this is one of them, and this is the one that came out of the measuring jug. This one came out of the glass dish, and I'm pleased to say, if you didn't watch right to the end, it came out of the glass dish without me having to break it, so that was useful. And then the last one that I made from a plaster mould that I had the negative, it was a slump mould, so I've now made it into a hump mould, so I'm using it the other way around. And what I've done is I have made one of the pieces from each of the moulds so that you can see what it actually comes out like. So this particular mould, this plaster mould that we made from the measuring jug, I've made this little bowl. Now I haven't finished this off, as you can see, and in a moment I'm going to go on the wheel and do some trimming. So I thought I'd show you how I finish off pieces that I've made that are hand built. So that one has come from that mould, and obviously this is now dried out sufficiently that it won't actually fit back on the mould, but you could, if you wanted to, make a deeper dish by bringing your slab a little bit deeper on that mould. But that's quite a nice sort of cereal bowl or noodle bowl, so a usable piece. This one has come from the straight-sided glass bowl, and you'll see that I've used some of my stamps on the outside when this was on the mould. So when I was pressing the stamps in, the mould was supporting the inside, so I haven't got any sort of bending on the inside of here. And again, I'll show you the trimming on these. This one is rather nice, actually. I really like the shape of this, bearing in mind that this is going to shrink. My clay shrinkage is about between 15 and 17%, so it's quite a bit. So this particular bowl, which would be a great pasta bowl, because it's a nice size, has come from this hump mould, which we did from the mixing bowl. So a really useful shape to have. And again, if I'd have wanted to, I could actually have taken it right the way down to the bottom of the mould to make a deeper dish. But actually I probably took it to about this level where you can just see this faint line of clay where the piece is released from the mould. And again, I've decorated that one on the outside, just on the rim, and because I know I'm going to trim this top edge, I've just brought the design down a little bit so that I'm not cutting down through into the design, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then this one, which is the sort of hat-shaped mould, I suppose you'd say, actually makes a really lovely wide open dish, so probably more suited to perhaps a fruit bowl or something like that, rather than using it to eat out of, but a really nice shape. And again, I've decorated that one actually round the base and on the inside of the lip so that you can see the design. Okay, so those I'm going to trim in a moment, but initially I thought that I would just show you how to use the drape mould. Quite a few people asked from the last video in the comments, would I just show them how I would then use the moulds that we made in that video. So that's what I'm going to do today. So I've rolled myself out some nice slabs with the slab maker, and these are quite thin. I don't want them too bulky for the finished piece, so my guides are this size, which I guess is, I don't actually know how wide that is, but I would say that's about 8mm. So I've got 8mm guides, so this is the sort of thinnest that I would use. And then I'm just going to cut a piece of clay out of this slab just to slump over this mould, just so that I haven't got gobs and gobs and gobs of it. And then I have the whirler and the mould on the whirler, and I'm just going to pick the whole thing up, pop it in front of me. I hope you can see it. And then I'm just going to ease the clay, rather than pushing it all in one go. I'm just easing it over the plaster former. Now, because the mould is plaster, it will be sucking out the moisture out of the clay when it goes on the plaster mould. So, you know, it's helping you to get your clay leather hard fairly quickly. When I did the ones that I've prepped for the filming, they were probably on the moulds for about 2 hours, so not very long, and it's not very warm here, although it was a warm day yesterday, but it's not summertime. So if it was summertime, then it probably would have been less time. And once the plaster mould has pulled all that moisture out, you can just take your mould off and it will stay in the shape. If it's too soft, you'll find that you're pushing the shape out, so you'll know that it needs to stay on the mould for just a little bit longer. Now, in the last video, I was saying that if you're using plaster moulds, you must use wooden tools. Now, before I do that, I'm actually going to use my knife, and I'm just taking off the very excess that's actually not anywhere near the mould. So I can just take off the weight of this, what's hanging over, just by sort of digging it off without touching the mould with my knife. Okay. And once I have done that and got rid of that excess there, get rid of that and that and that, I'm just going to make sure that the clay is touching the mould, okay, because I don't want it flaring out at the bottom. And then I've got the mould more or less centralised on the whirler, and then I'm going to use this, which is just a wooden tool with almost a pin end on it, and I'm just going to hold it against my body so that I am bracing it so that it's not moving, so it's not moving up and down. And then I'm just going to score a line by turning the whirler onto that mould so that I can see where it needs to be cut. Okay, right, so once I've got it to there, I can then, you know, kind of go in with my wooden tool just to take that excess off. And all I'm really wanting to do is just take off what I know I definitely don't want on this mould. So I'm just going in with this wooden tool and just taking off this flounce off the bottom. Once I've got it to this stage, I'm then going to take it over to my wheel, and I'm going to do all the rest of the prep for sorting out this piece on the mould on my wheel. I could do it easily by hand, but it's quicker on the wheel. And if you have a wheel, why wouldn't you use it? But if you have just a whirler, then all I'm going to do is run my rubber kidney over the surface of this mould to make it nice and smooth, so that it gives me a really, really lovely finish on my outside. So it's all lovely and smooth, and it's smooth across the bottom, as you can see. So I'm going to reset the camera over by the wheel, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to this piece, and then we'll mark it up with some stamps. So that's the first stage, and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to trim the bowls that I made yesterday so that they are then the finished article. Okay, so here we are over at my wheel. I'm just balancing the plaster mould with the slab on a little pot on top of my Giffen grip. If you haven't got a Giffen grip, I'm going to tell you what that is in a minute. But obviously you don't actually need it for this particular process, but I'm just using, in case you're wondering what this is, I'm just using it as a stand because it happens to be on the wheel at the moment. And then I'm just going to make sure that this piece is centred on the wheel before I do anything to it, because I don't want to be pushing it if it's not on the centre, because I'll be making the slab thinner on one side than the other. And then all I'm going to do is take a rubber kidney. I like these are Mud Tools rubber kidneys, and they're really nice because they're nice and soft and flexible, and you can buy them in different colours, and the different colours signify the different flexibility, but my favourite is the yellow because I find that it actually bends really nicely. And then all I'm going to do, having got this slab onto this mould, is use the kidney just to smooth the surface of the clay. So I'm just going to keep the wheel turning fairly slowly. I don't need a great amount of speed, and I'm just using the rubber kidney just to compact the clay from the slab, because I didn't do that when it was in its slab form, because I knew that I would be compacting it actually on the wheel. So I am using this process to compact my slab, and as you can see there's nothing coming off. I'm just literally just using this just to smooth the surface, and I'm just going to start going down the side of the bowl down to the bottom. As it gets down to the bottom, of course, it gets a little bit where I've cut it, it's a little bit more uneven, so that's why it's wobbling a little bit. And then I'm just going to use the side of the kidney just to make that surface nice and smooth all the way down the bowl. So I don't have to do anything in terms of finishing this piece on the outside at all, because it's all done on the mould. So when I actually come to turning it out, the only bit that I'm going to need to be worried about is the rim and the inside. And then I'm going to take the little wooden spike tool that we were using earlier. This rim is just a little bit uneven, as you can see on here, and again I'm going to brace my arm against my body so that it's not moving, and I'm just going to make a mark on this bowl and cut through down to the mould to take that rim off level, because it wasn't level before. As you can see from the piece that's come off, some of it was kind of sort of 4 or 5 mil and the other was 1 or 2 mil, so it wasn't a straight edge on there, so I just needed to straighten the edge off, and I've dropped my tool, pick that up. So I'm just going to go over that edge again with my rubber kidney just to sort out this kind of messy bit that I've just put on there from cutting that. Make sure that that is nice and smooth. As you can see, I'm just going to run my finger underneath there. I'm not too worried about that edge, because that will be the bit that we're going to trim off, and I'm going to show you in a minute. So that is kind of done. So that slab is now on the mould, nice and smooth. It's almost burnished, and indeed you could burnish it if you're one of those people that likes to burnish things. You could easily burnish it using this technique. So I've just made sure that that's nice and level there. And now if I want to do some stamping on it, this is the point where I would do it. So I actually do it all in one go. So I'm just going to put my maker's mark on. So this is my Pottery Corner maker's mark. And again, I'm going to do this whilst it's on the mould, because it's not going to push the item out of shape because the mould is holding it. So it's a good time to get your stamps and things that you want to do onto the mould. And indeed, if you wanted to put a foot ring on, you could easily actually just put a coil of foot ring on at this stage whilst it's still on the mould. So that's that bit done. And then, you know, obviously you can then decorate it however you want to decorate it. So, I mean, these are some of the handmade stamps. We did handmade stamps in the last video. So, I mean, I can, if I want to, just spend a little bit of time coming down from the rim just a little bit, as I said, because I know I'm going to lose a little bit from trimming when I come to taking this off the mould. So I could, you know, actually stamp my piece now. So that would be how I would do it. So that's now ready to just sit for a couple of hours just to dry off, and then I'll lift that off the mould and it will then support itself. So this is a Giffen grip, as I was saying. So this is a separate item that is used for trimming. It isn't an absolute necessity, but it does make life a little bit easier, and it fits over the top of my, this is my wheel head. I use this little mat just to stop the bats vibrating, and then the Giffen grip actually fits over the top of my wheel. And it's a useful thing because it means that you don't have to recenter your work when you are trimming on the wheel. And it works just by rotating, and there are different ends. You can use it this way round with these little feet. So if you were making something taller, like mugs and things like that, these little feet come in different lengths. I've got different length ones that I can use, but for this purposes of doing this bowl, I'm just using it this way around. And again, I have just added this little piece of slight padding onto the end of the Gif and Grip thing itself, because I find that this plastic on here is a bit hard and it makes marks on my work. So I've just used a piece of very soft padding material just so that it doesn't mark my work. So I'm going to show you how I would trim the rim on one of these bowls. So this is the bowl from the mixing bowl mould, and I'm just going to pop it onto the Gif and Grip and turn the wheel anti-clockwise. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing, and then I want to make sure that it is gripped by the feet so that it's not going to move. So it's not moving when the wheel is spinning, it's actually held in place. So I'm just making sure that that's nice and firm. As you can see, that's now not moving. Okay, so routinely when I'm trimming on my own in the studio, I use a cone of shame. So we have dogs, so anybody who's got a dog will know what I'm talking about, the cone of shame. So this is a cone of shame, a dog cone of shame, which you would use if your dog had had an operation or something to stop them biting. So I use this because I put it round my wheel and then it catches all the flinging bits of clay trim, but it makes a bit of a noise because it rubs slightly on the Gif and Grip. So for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to use it, and then I'll have to hoover my studio afterwards. Aren't I kind to you YouTubers? So usually I would put the cone of shame on, and then all the bits that are coming off will go into the wheel bucket. Cissy is in the studio. She's just run away from the cone of shame, which is quite funny. So I'll pop that down there. So routinely I would have that up so that it catches all the bits, and then you're keeping a nice clean studio. This is a Mud Tools trimmer. I can't remember what it's called. It's probably called something like a all-in-one or something like that it's called. So it's a very good tool. I do find that the Mud Tools, they're pretty good actually. So I'm just going to start my wheel off. All I really want to do is take away this nasty edge on this bowl. There really isn't very much else to do. So I'm just literally just going to take off. This clay is now slightly past leather hard. So it's quite dry, and all I'm doing is just taking off, piece at a time, that rough rim. So I don't need very much speed, so the wheel is nice and slow, and most of the trimming is going in the bowl, so that will save me picking it all up afterwards. And the other thing that you may have noticed is under my wheel I have a piece of plastic tablecloth that you would usually use on the table, and I find that quite useful as well if I'm trimming, because the little bits go absolutely everywhere. I just use the tablecloth underneath the wheel, and then of course when I lift the wheel off I can just lift the tablecloth up and pour all the clay bits into the bin, or indeed reuse them depending on what I've been doing. So I'm just taking this edge off with my trimming tool. I just want to make sure that it's nice and clean and tidy, because very often it's the finish on your pieces that make the difference, especially if you're selling your work. It's nice that it's properly finished, and you haven't got rough edges or something that doesn't look quite polished. Okay, so I think I'm just about there. must actually just make sure that we've got a nice rounded edge over there like so. And again, it's a process, it doesn't take very long, but it's very effective. Right, there we are. I'm happy with that. And then what I'm going to do, and you'll have seen me do this in one of the other videos, so if you haven't seen me use a scrubby, have a look at the How to Finish Your Edges, I think it's called, the video. You'll find it on the Top Tip Tuesday playlist. So, you know, I'm going to use this. This is just a dishwashing scrubby, and the more worn they get, the better they are. And then I'm just going to, again, keep the wheel going quite slowly, and then I'm just going to use this scrubby on the inside of the dish, over the rim, holding the scrubby on my finger on both sides of there, just to make that rim lovely and smooth. And all it does really, it's almost like sanding. It just takes off the little bits and pieces that have been left on there from the turning tool. And that is it, done. And I like to use one of these soft takey brushes. So I'm just going to release the bowl by just turning the gif and grip slightly, and all the trimmings are in there. So I'm just going to brush those down into the wheel bowl, so they're nice and easy to clean up later. So I'm just going to brush the pieces out so that I'm not pushing them into the surface of the clay. And as you can see, that rim is nice and smooth, and that's all basically ready to go in for biscuit firing. So that's all done. No problem at all. I'm just going to use the scrubby on there because there's just a mark on the base. I'm just going to rub that out using the scrubby. I'm almost using it like an eraser where that's just been sat that way round on the gif and grip. There we are. That's it, all done. So that's how I finish off the pieces from using the plaster moulds. So as I say, if you don't have a wheel, you can do all of this by using a whirler. But obviously, if you do have a wheel, it's just so easy to use your wheel for hand-built pieces as well as using your wheel for throwing. So, you know, you can actually use the wheel for dual purposes. You don't just have to keep it for throwing. So I hope that's been helpful. Thanks for coming along again. And thank you so much to everybody who comments regularly on my videos. Next time I'm going to do something slightly different, because I'm going to have a look back on the comments of the previous videos, and I'm going to work out where everybody's viewing. So on this video, please, in the comments, please tell me where you're viewing from. Where in the world are you? It's just so interesting to have comments from everywhere. I have lovely, lovely viewers from Australia, from the States, obviously, from Sweden. There's Helena in Sweden. Hello, Helena. And then there's Kerin in Australia, who always makes me laugh with her comments. Thank you, Kerin. And it's just great to have the feedback from you. So wherever you're watching in the world, comment below, because next video we're going to be doing something a little bit different. So as usual, have a look at the website, and the Etsy shop is open, so do have a look, and I hope that's been helpful. In the meantime, keep yourselves safe and well, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.